Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are cracking open a universe that usually prides itself on being grim, dark, and utterly hopeless. And we are asking a question that, on the surface at least, sounds like it should fix everything.
Right, because we are talking about Warhammer 40,000 today.
We are, but we aren't talking about the 40K you see on the tabletop. You know, we aren't counting dice or measuring range today.
No, definitely not. We are doing a forensic analysis of a timeline that never happened. We have a huge stack of notes here, exploring a massive speculative history scenario based on some really incredible source material.
And look, even if you don't have a library full of codexes or you don't know your Primarchs from your Necrons, stick with us, because at its core, this isn't just about space marines shooting aliens.
No, it's a study on leadership.
Right.
It's about the psychology of religion and really what happens when a civilization loses its North Star.
Exactly. It is a study of a very specific kind of tragedy. We're looking at a history defined by a single point of divergence, a total sliding doors moment for the entire galaxy.
And that moment revolves around the Golden Throne.
A golden throne. Probably the most iconic, terrifying piece of furniture in science fiction history.
It really is the linchpin of the entire setting. Everything in 40K revolves around that chair. It is the absolute center of the wheel.
So before we break reality and get into the alternate history, let's set the scene for the listeners who might only know the memes or the video games.
Good idea.
Let's establish the standard model of 40K lore. So in the timeline, everyone knows the Emperor of Mankind is, well, he's a battery.
A battery, a lighthouse, and a prison warden all rolled into one.
Yeah.
In the canon timeline, specifically during the climax of the Horus Heresy, which is the Siege of Terra, the Emperor fights his son, Horus.
And he wins.
He wins, yes. He obliterates Horus's soul entirely, but he is mortally wounded in the process. His body is shattered, his soul is flayed. And to keep him from dying completely, he is interred upon this massive arcane device called the Golden Throne.
Which is often depicted in the art as this majestic, gothic thing. But the deeper you read into the lore, it's basically a life support system that doubles as a torture device.
Oh, it's a horrific machine. It was actually never meant to be a life support system for a corpse. It was originally meant to control the Webway.
Right, the travel network.
Exactly. But now, he is neither dead nor truly alive. He is a rotting carcass, the corpse god, kept animated by failing machinery and the daily sacrifice of 1,000 psychic souls who are basically fed into the machine to keep the fires burning.
Just a brutal, brutal concept.
It is. But because he is on that throne, his psychic mind projects the Astronomicon.
The Lighthouse.
Correct. The psychic beacon that allows human ships to navigate the warp. Without it, humanity is isolated, blind, and eventually devoured by demons.
So the Golden Throne is the literal only thing keeping the Imperium alive?
Yes. It is the ultimate symbol of utilitarian sacrifice. One man suffers eternally so that trillions can survive just one more day.
And the political cost of that is massive. Because he's stuck on the chair, he can't talk, he can't rule. He is a silent statue.
Which means the Imperium is ruled in his name, but not by him.
Right.
It becomes a stagnant, superstitious, decaying empire that worships him as a god, which is something he specifically and violently hated during his life.
Yeah, he burned cities to the ground to prove he wasn't a god.
He did. That is the fundamental irony of 40K. He becomes the thing he despised in order to save the people he loves.
Okay, so that is the baseline. High stakes, maximum grimdark. But today, we are flipping the script. Our source material asks a very simple question. What if the Emperor was never bound to the throne?
It sounds like the good ending, doesn't it?
It totally does. I mean, I was reading through the prep notes yesterday, and I thought, okay, the Emperor survives. He's not a vegetable. He's walking around. Surely that means the Imperium is stronger.
You'd think so.
A living, breathing Emperor just has to be better than a corpse on a chair.
And that is exactly the assumption this deep dive is here to dismantle.
Really? You're telling me a living superhero god king is a bad thing?
The source material is very clear on this. If the Emperor never enters the Golden Throne, the result isn't a stronger Imperium, it is an unrecognizable one.
Unrecognizable.
Yes. And it argues that this alternate path leads to a much slower, more painful and confusing form of collapse.
Wow. Okay, so this isn't some fix-it fan fiction where everyone lives happily ever after and the Tyranids get invited to tea.
Far from it. This is a story about what happens when you remove the symbol that holds a civilization together, but leave the man behind it alive.
Oh, I see.
It distinguishes between the myth of the Emperor and the man of the Emperor. And it turns out, the myth might be way more useful.
I love that distinction. Okay, so our mission today is to map this out. We are going to walk through this alternate timeline, starting from the Siege of Terra and going all the way to the 41st millennium.
Sounds good.
We're going to see how the politics change, how chaos reacts, and why survival might not be enough. So let's start at the pivotal moment.
We need to look at the decision on the Bridge of the Vengeful Spirit, or rather, immediately after, back in the throne room.
Right. The point of divergence. In the canon, the Emperor is wounded. Rogal Dorn carries him back to the throne room. And Malcador the Sigillite, his right-hand man, the second most powerful psyker in human history, is currently sitting on the throne to buy time.
Yes.
And in canon, Malcador basically crumbles to dust so the Emperor can take his place.
Correct. Malcador sacrifices himself to hold the door shut for a few hours. But in this timeline, the wound happens. Dorn carries the Emperor back. But the reaction is different. Malcador makes a different choice.
In the source, it says Malcador decides to seal the Webway gate permanently.
This is absolutely crucial. To understand why this changes history, you have to remember what the Golden Throne was actually doing at that moment. It wasn't just keeping the Emperor alive, it was holding back a psychic dam.
The Webway project.
Yes, the Emperor's great dream. He wanted humanity to travel the galaxy without using the warp. Essentially, using an ancient network of tunnels called the Webway.
But Magnus the Red ruined that.
He did. Magnus, one of his sons, accidentally smashed the protective seals, trying to warn his father about Horus. So during the Siege of Terra, there was a gaping hole in reality beneath the Imperial Palace, with millions of demons scratching at the door, trying to pour through directly onto Terra.
And the Emperor, or Malcador, has to sit on the throne to keep that door locked. It requires immense psychic focus. It's like holding a blast door shut with your mind against a hurricane.
Exactly. If they get off, the door opens, Terra is consumed. In canon, the Emperor sits on it forever to keep it shut. He becomes the eternal doorkeeper.
Right.
But in our what if, Malcador looks at the wounded Emperor, his oldest friend, and he decides, I cannot let him become a prisoner. I cannot let the master of mankind become a battery.
So he chooses the nuclear option.
He triggers the failsafe. Vulcan, another Primarch, had installed a device called the Talisman of Seven Hammers. Essentially a kill switch for the throne.
Does it blow up Terra?
No, Malcador doesn't destroy the planet, but he permanently collapses the gate. We are talking about burying the project, severing the connection to the Webway, and shutting down the machinery.
And by shutting down the machinery, the Golden Throne turns off.
And if the throne is off, the Emperor doesn't have to sit on it.
So he is allowed to live.
He is. Now let's be clear about his condition. He is still devastated by the fight with Horus. He is physically shattered, one eye blown out, arms severed, his soul flayed by the powers of chaos.
Yeah, he's in rough shape.
Very rough. But he isn't plugged into the machine. He is taken to a medical stasis field or a healing sanctum deep within the palace. He is weakened, he is silent, but he is technically alive and free.
Okay, breathe that in for a second. The Emperor is alive, he's in a hospital bed, not a torture chair, but you're saying this immediate aftermath isn't a celebration.
Not at all. Think about the psychic fallout. The source describes the Emperor's presence in the warp in this timeline as diminished, unstable, incomplete. He doesn't speak for months.
That's a long time for a godlike being to be silent. And what about Malcador? Does he make it?
Malcador actually survives longer here. He doesn't burn out his soul holding the throne for those final excruciating hours because he shut the throne down.
Oh, that makes sense.
But the source notes something chilling. Malcador looks at the situation, a living, silent emperor, and he realizes the truth before anyone else.
Which is what?
That the Imperium has lost its anchor.
But the anchor's still there. He's literally in the other room recovering.
Is he, though? The Emperor was an absolute force of nature, a figure of total certainty. Do this, conquer that, burn this. The Great Crusade was driven by his singular will.
Right.
Now he's a broken man in a medical bay. He's physically present, but spiritually absent. This brings us to the Primarchs, the Emperor's sons. How do they react?
Oh, this is fascinating. In canon, when the Emperor, quote-unquote, dies or ascends to the throne, it's like a psychic scream, right? Everyone feels the grief. It drives some of them mad with rage. It's a unifying trauma.
It's a traumatic break, but it provides closure. He sacrificed himself. We must avenge him. It gives them a mission. But here, the source describes the feeling not as a scream, but as an absence.
An absence. That feels almost worse. It's quieter. It's the difference between a funeral and a missing person case.
Let's look at Robud Gilliman, the master of logistics, the man who needs order. In this timeline, he arrives at Terra, sees the Emperor is alive but comatose, and he senses hesitation where certainty once existed.
That is terrifying for a guy like Gilliman. He operates on the assumption that the emperor knows best. If the emperor is just quiet, hesitant.
It shakes his foundation. He's trying to organize the relief effort, trying to rebuild the government, but the ultimate authority at the top isn't dead, which he could process, but is simply not engaging.
He can't claim the emperor wills it because the emperor is right there.
Exactly. He might wake up and say, "No, I don't." He is paralyzed by the potential of the emperor's opinion.
It paralyzes him. And then look at Rogaldorn, the Praetorian, the defender. He feels something the source describes as worse than fear. Responsibility without guidance.
Oof. That hits hard. Responsibility without guidance.
Because if the emperor is dead, you can mourn him and carry on his legacy. You can turn him into a martyr.
Exactly. A martyr is perfect. A martyr never changes their mind. A martyr is a fixed point you can build a philosophy around. You can project whatever you need onto a dead god.
Yeah.
But a silent, broken father who is just there, that creates a vacuum. A martyr is a symbol. A comatose patient is a liability.
It's the difference between grieving a loss and dealing with a ghost in the house.
Precisely. The removal of the emperor's absolute certainty creates a psychological vacuum for his sons. They are looking for orders, but there are no orders coming. Just silence from the medical bench.
And they start to bicker, right?
They do. Without the emperor's active voice or the unifying grief of his death, the scouring, which is the period where they chase the traitors back to the Eye of Terror, becomes disjointed.
They don't have that purity of purpose.
No. They don't have it for the emperor. They have for what? The guy in the recovery wing.
So we move into the 1st century after the siege. Let's call this the vacuum of power era.
This is where the mechanics of the setting really start to break down. We mentioned the Astronomicon earlier.
The lighthouse. This is the biggest technical hurdle, right? Because if you turn off the throne, do you turn off the light?
Huge. In canon, the Astronomicon is powered by the Golden Throne and the Emperor's sheer will. His agony, focused into a beam, it burns bright because it is fed by sacrifice. It is a blazing sun in the warp.
But in this timeline, the throne is off, so no lighthouse.
Well, a dimmer one, the Astronomicon isn't gone because the Emperor is still a potent psyker and he's still on Terra, but he's recovering. He's not focusing 100% of his soul on the beacon. He's trying to heal his own shattered mind, so the beacon is flickering.
That sounds bad for space travel.
It is catastrophic. Warp travel relies on that beacon to triangulate position. It's like sailing in the 1700s. You need the stars. If the stars keep blinking out or moving, you crash into the rocks. The source says travel becomes erratic.
Which means trade routes collapse.
Trade routes, communication lines, troop movements. Imagine the internet suddenly working only 60% of the time and randomly disconnecting entire continents for weeks.
That destroys the concept of a unified empire. You can't govern what you can't reach.
Some sectors of the galaxy are isolated for decades. Others fall entirely because reinforcements just never show up. They get lost in the warp. The galaxy physically feels larger and more dangerous.
The Imperium stops being a monolith and starts becoming an archipelago of isolated islands.
And more fragmented, which leads to the political shift. In canon, the High Lords of Terra eventually take over because the Emperor is effectively dead. But here, the source says the High Lords rise faster.
This seems counterintuitive, right?
It
does. Yeah, why faster? I would think if the Emperor is alive, the High Lords would be scared to take power. They'd be walking on eggshells waiting for him to wake up.
But remember, power despises a vacuum. The Emperor exists, but he does not rule. He is recovering. He is silent. Day-to-day decisions need to be made now.
Somebody has to run the show.
Exactly. Who manages the tides? Who authorizes the fleets? Who decides which systems to abandon because the warp beacon is flickering?
The bureaucrats.
Right. But there is a crucial difference in their authority. In canon, they govern in the name of the Emperor. They claim to interpret the will of the god on the throne. It's a religious mandate. I speak for the martyr.
The Emperor protects, and I am his servant.
Exactly. But in this timeline, they are governing instead of him.
That is a subtle but massive distinction.
It completely undermines their legitimacy, yet makes them more desperate to hold on to it. They aren't the voice of God. They are the substitute teachers while the principal is sick.
And the students know it.
The students, the planetary governors, the Space Marine chapters, they know it. This is the moment the fracture begins.
Yeah.
The bureaucracy solidifies its grip, not out of reverence, but out of necessity and ambition.
They start building a system that doesn't need the Emperor.
Because they can't wait for him to wake up. They start creating fail-safes and protocols that bypass the throne room entirely.
It's institutional inertia. Once you start running the empire without him, it becomes really hard to stop. You build bypasses around the emperor.
And while humanity is fumbling with this erratic travel and bureaucratic coup, the enemy is watching.
Chaos, the ruinous powers, the big bads.
So in canon, Chaos is pretty happy with the outcome. The Emperor is suffering, humanity is miserable, it's an infinite buffet of bad emotions.
Right.
But here, Chaos notices the silence immediately. The source says, the Emperor is alive, but he's no longer absolute.
So do they attack? Finish the job?
You would think so. You'd expect a massive black crusade right then and there. Abaddon the Despoiler gathering the legions to crush Terra while it's weak. But the source says they make a strategic pivot. They choose to wait.
Wait! That sounds un-chaos-like. Usually they're all about blood and excess and changing things. Why wait?
Think about the narrative they lost. In canon, they have the corpse god. It's a rallying cry. Look at your false idol rotting on his throne. Join us. It gives the traitor legions a focus. It gives them something to hate.
Right, it validates their rebellion. We are the strong ones, he is the dead one.
Exactly. But here, there is no eternal scream to feed upon. There is no corpse god, just a wounded old man in a hospital. The source says this is actually more dangerous for humanity.
Why is waiting worse?
Because in canon, Chaos is an active antagonist. They force the Imperium to remain vigilant. They force unity through fear of a common enemy. The Inquisition, the Space Marines, they stay sharp because the wolves are at the door. If Chaos backs off and waits,
the Imperium relaxes.
The Imperium turns inward. They let humanity rot from the inside. Without the constant existential pressure of a unified long war, the cracks in the Imperium, the isolation of sectors, the ambition of the High Lords start to widen on their own.
So Chaos is basically saying, never interrupt your enemy when he is making a mistake.
Exactly. Nurgle is happy because the stagnation is happening naturally. Tzeentch is happy because the politics are becoming Byzantine. The source explicitly states the canon future becomes impossible to recover.
A point of no return.
Yes, the urgency that kept the Imperium alive in canon evaporates entirely.
So let's jump forward. We're out of the immediate aftermath. We're centuries down the line. The Emperor recovers.
He does. He's an eternal. That's his biological nature. Given enough time, his body heals, his mind knits itself back together.
This should be the moment of triumph, the return of the king. He walks out onto the balcony, the music swells, and he fixes everything.
That is the Disney version. That's what the fanboys want. But the source gives us the tragedy. The Emperor recovers. Yes, he is not trapped. He can actually project dominance again. But the timeline says, when he finally speaks again, the galaxy is no longer ready to listen.
How can they not be ready? He's the Emperor. He's the guy on the coins.
Because he waited too long. Remember, centuries have passed. Generations of humans have lived and died while he was silent. The High Lords are entrenched. The bureaucracy is massive and self-serving.
So he comes back, and the system basically says, sir, you're disrupting the workflow.
Worse, the system has evolved a belief system that he never intended. This is the rise of faith section of our breakdown, and it is the most delicious irony in the whole script.
Oh, right. The Emperor was a militant atheist. He conceived the imperial truth. He wanted to destroy all religion. He burned cities for worshiping him. The Word-Bearers Legion fell to Chaos specifically because he scolded them for worshiping him.
Correct. In canon, the imperial cult rises because he's a martyr. But in this timeline, the source argues that faith spreads because he's distant.
Explain that.
People fear what happens when he is gone. The uncertainty we talked about, the hesitation Gilliman felt. The common people feel that 1,000 times over. They need certainty. So if the Emperor won't give it to them, they invent it.
They start worshiping him to fill the void.
Yes, worship accelerates because he is distant, not because he is dead. The ecclesiarchy, the church, rises earlier in this timeline.
That is so twisted. He's alive, maybe even trying to tell them, stop worshiping me, but the machine is too loud.
And the Inquisition becomes more aggressive and paranoid. They aren't protecting a god. They are protecting the idea of a god against the reality of the man.
That is a deep concept, protecting the idea against the reality.
Imagine the Emperor walking into a High Lord Council meeting 500 years later. He gives a logical order. Disband the ecclesiarchy. I am not a god. Stop burning people.
Right, because that's what he would say.
But the High Lords and the Church have spent 500 years building their power on that religion. If his actual order contradicts their dogma,
they might reject the order or claim he's being tested. Or that it's not really him. The Emperor works in mysterious ways, and this specific order is clearly a test of our faith.
Exactly. They gaslight the Emperor. The source calls this the ultimate irony. He witnesses the birth of a church built around his silence.
Wow.
He is a prisoner not of the Golden Throne, but of his own myth. He becomes a figurehead in his own empire.
And he can't stop it.
He can't. To stop it would require a civil war against his own government, against the people who love him. It would destroy the fragile Imperium he's trying to save.
He's trapped.
He is paralyzed by the monster he created. He realizes that if he fights the church, he destroys the only thing holding humanity together.
This is so much more psychological than just orcs attack. It's about the failure of the Great Crusade's dream.
It is. It's the realization that you cannot force humanity to be rational.
So let's fast forward. Let's go to the long term. The 41st millennium. 10,000 years later. In canon, this is the time of ending. Tyranids, Necrons, chaos, everything is on fire. The clock is at 1 minute to midnight. What does the no throne timeline look like?
The source gives us a key phrase. Imperium's plural.
Plural.
There is no single Imperium of man.
Wow.
The erratic warp travel we talked about. The lack of a strong central martyrdom figure. It meant that unity couldn't hold. The galaxy was too big, and the lighthouse was too dim.
So instead of one massive empire, you have what? Kingdoms? Warlords?
You have fragmented empires. Think of it like the fall of Rome splitting into dozens of successor states. You have the realm of Ultramar, perhaps, standing as a beacon of order. You have the Segmentum Solar holding tight to Terra. But then you have vast swaths of space ruled by petty tyrants or completely regressed to barbarism.
And what about the religion? Is everyone still worshiping him?
That's fragmented too. The Source outlines two scenarios. Scenario A, some worlds worship the Emperor as a god who chose to walk away.
Like a deist god. He created us and left.
Yes. A distant father figure. He is alive, but he is disappointed in us, so we must punish ourselves to bring him back.
Cheery.
But then scenario B, others deny his divinity entirely. They stick to the old imperial truth. They say, he's just a man living on Terra. Why are you praying to him? He's literally just a guy.
And I assume these two groups don't get along.
They burn each other. The source says humanity begins tearing itself apart without chaos's help. Civil conflict, wars of faith, becomes the defining state of the galaxy.
So chaos didn't need to launch a Black Crusade, they just had to sit back and watch us eat ourselves.
Precisely. Chaos is weaker in some regions because there's less concentrated psychic energy to feed on. No single astronomicon beam cutting through the warp, but they are stronger in others. The overall galaxy, though, is described as quieter.
Quieter sounds nice.
Not in 40K.
Yeah.
It's quiet, not because of peace, but because, and this is a chilling line from the source, there was no longer a single war worth fighting.
Oh, wow. That is bleak. In canon, at least everyone is fighting for survival. For the species, it's us versus them. Here, they're just fighting for scraps.
Scraps and local power. The grand narrative of humanity is gone. We're just another squabbling species in a dark forest.
And where is the Emperor in all of this? He's still alive, right? He's an eternal.
He is. In the 41st millennium of this timeline, he lives in isolation on Terra.
Is he ruling?
No. He is described as guarded, feared, and rarely seen. He's a relic.
A relic of a dream that no longer matches reality.
Exactly. He's like an ancient king living in a crumbling castle, while the peasants outside have forgotten who he really is, or they've turned him into a fairy tale. He is a tragic figure. He survived the heresy, but he lost the Imperium.
That hurts. It really hurts. You almost feel like the Golden Throne, the torture chair, was a mercy compared to this slow irrelevance.
That brings us to the thematic analysis. So what of this whole deep dive?
The source concludes that this era is not remembered as a triumph.
No. It argues that when the Emperor did not enter the Golden Throne, humanity did not gain freedom. It lost direction.
Let's compare the two timelines, canon versus alternate.
Canon, you have total psychic stagnation. The Imperium hasn't invented anything new in 10,000 years. Everyone is miserable, but there is coherence.
Everyone is miserable together.
Yes, the Imperium moves as one beast. It can mobilize millions of ships. It can throw 1 billion guardsmen into a meat grinder to hold back the horrors of the dark.
And in the alternate timeline,
You avoid the stagnation. Maybe technology advances in some pockets. Maybe there's more cultural variety. But you lose coherence. You lose the ability to defend against the ultimate threats.
Right. If the Tyranids show up, the Great Devourer, in this fragmented timeline,
Humanity is finished. There is no united front. The Tyranids would eat the galaxy piecemeal, one fractured empire at a time. The Ultramarines might hold out for a while, but they can't save the whole galaxy alone.
It's the paradox of hope.
Even hope has consequences. The source makes a really interesting point here. It says this timeline only exists because Horus still fell.
Right. The Emperor was still wounded.
If Horus hadn't fallen, none of this would have happened. But given that the wound occurred, the source suggests that the Golden Throne, as horrific as it is, might have been the better of two terrible options.
That is a hard pill to swallow. That the torture of a father and the enslavement of a species was the optimal path.
It reveals the grim-dark nature of the setting. In this universe, there are no good choices. Only bad ones and worse ones. Sometimes the symbol is more powerful than the reality. The martyr on the throne creates a unifying myth that keeps the lights on. The wounded ruler walking the halls just creates confusion.
It's the difference between a god and a politician. You can argue with a politician. You can't argue with a god who is dying for your sins every single second.
Precisely. And that lack of argument keeps the Imperium stable enough to survive the nightmare that is the 41st millennium.
The source ends with a really scary thought. The Imperium might have become something far more terrifying if left to its own devices.
Imagine a fragmented humanity, warring with itself, wielding forbidden technologies without oversight, falling to chaos slowly, world by world, without even realizing it. It's a slow death versus a defiant stand.
It really makes you appreciate the horror of the Golden Throne in a new way. It's not just a prison, it's the glue.
It is the anchor, and without it, the ship drifts into the dark.
So we've gone from a sealed gate to a fragmented galaxy, from a silent emperor to a deaf galaxy. It's a tragic arc.
It is. It forces us to ask, what makes a civilization? Is it the leader? Or is it the shared belief in a leader?
And does the leader even matter if the belief takes on a life of its own?
Exactly.
This has been a heavy one. I love these alternate histories because they strip away the explosions and the bolters and make you look at the sociology of the setting.
It's the human element, or the post-human element.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with that final provocative thought from the source. It's something to chew on.
Go ahead.
The Emperor survived the heresy only to lose the Imperium he tried to build. So the question is it better to die as a unifying martyr or live long enough to become irrelevant to your own creation?
A question for the ages.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you in the next timeline.
Stay curious.
And stay loyal. See ya.